My name is Peter Felix. I'm chair of the SES. Delighted to welcome you here this evening for one of our Explorer talks. I'd like to start by thanking Optimist Performance for sponsoring the Explorer series, and they will be recording the speech and talk this evening because we make it available to those who can't actually be here. Now, our speaker tonight is Beki Henderson. Round of applause, I think.
Thank you.
Now, Beki is a BAFTA-nominated TV producer. She specializes in high-risk locations, extreme environments, and remote communities. She was awarded our 2021 Neville Shulman Explorer Award for expedition filmmaking. Neville, please over here. I think around. And Becky's going to talk about her expedition into the green abyss, as you can see. So without more ado, Becky, thank you.
Thank you. So what if some of the most interesting stories that we hear take place in the most remote parts of our planet? And what if we can get new perspectives from places that we've just never been to if we just took the chance to listen? So take Gabon. Over 80% of the country is covered in forest. It's got 13 national parks. That is the most in the whole of Africa. It's got a pristine ecosystem. Yet, I bet most of us can't put it on a map. Oh, there it is. Can I ask who does know where Gabon is? Put your hand up if you know where Gabon was before I showed you that. Okay. So that's what drew it in. That is what drew me in. I've been to Gabon before for television expeditions, but I wanted this time to go to understand it. I didn't want to just explore it for television. I wanted to go and find out what was happening in the heart of that wilderness. All right, here we go. For anyone who doesn't know, apart from Peter just giving me a lovely introduction, I am a TV producer. I specialise in adventure and expedition shows. I've been to all 7 continents on the planet to make films, taking stories from some of the most far-flung places to your TV screens. I think if you've seen any of the shows you might recognise, you'll probably recognise some faces there. So I've worked with Ben Fogle doing Race to the South Pole and Search for the Nile, the most recent ones. I've worked on Steve Backshaw's expedition series. I've worked with Leveson Wood, who I know is SES ambassador. If you've seen any of these shows, you'll have seen things I've made. In my work though, as Peter said, I specialise in working with remote communities. So that means often I spend months on end working and living alongside these communities. But this one was going to be different. This expedition, it had no TV broadcaster, no recce trips, no film crew, just me and my friend Dave. That's about it. Sorry, we haven't done a tech check. There we go. So as Peter said, I was very fortunate enough to win the 2021 Neville Shulman Award. So thank you, Neville. We were going to attempt to traverse one of Gabon's most impenetrable jungles, the Waka National Park. It's known for its remote and its challenging landscape, so it means that it's really largely untouched. And running through the heart of this national park is the River Akoi. And we were going to navigate it by pack raft to find a remote village called Ngonde. And we just wanted to explore the way of life and learn the stories that were happening there. So this is the story. Oh, first of all, who knows what a pack raft is? Has anyone tried to paddle one? There we go, 1 hand, 2 hands. All I can describe it as is an inflatable rubber ring with a bottom. Most expeditions you might go big kayaks and canoes and all this gear. That was it. That's all I was taking, me and my mate. We had one each. It's lightweight, so it means I can carry it, but it also is like trying to paddle a leaf on water. Really hard to control. So here we go. This is a little example of my mapping because I thought this might give you a little idea of where my brain was at. I'd mapped out 250 kilometres of this river. Now, out of that 250 kilometres, 50% of the river was not visible from satellite imagery. So I had to work with topography maps just to work out which way the river might flow until I picked it up again on satellite imagery. There was little to no information from the outside. Gabon, people have heard of it, not a lot, but I could get word of mouth. But on the internet, there was nothing. The last known interaction I could find with Ngonde village was from an anthropologist 15 years prior to my visit. He'd been there to map and learn about hunter-gatherer patterns. And luckily for me, he'd mapped not only the hunting trails, but he'd kept the coordinates even 15 years later, and he shared them with me. Now, the two things about that wasn't really that useful was one, jungle regrowth happens within a matter of weeks. So 15 years, was I really going to find that trail? I didn't know. They also weren't on the river. They went to Ngonde, but they weren't on the river. But I mapped it anyway because, well, with no intel, all intel is good. So, 31st of December 2023, I'd been in Libreville for a couple of days. I'd been preparing, I'd been packing, and I'd been getting the last logistics in order. I'd spent my New Year's Day divvying up sort of fruit and nuts into little packs, counting out how many snack bars I needed, and buying gifts for the Ngonde residents at this very market. And as the clock struck midnight, we stayed up because, well, it's New Year's Eve, isn't it? We sang Auld Lang Syne, just the two of us in a tiny little flat in Libreville. And it struck me. We were now out of preparation mode. And it was the first day of 2024, and we were about to embark on what was going to be the most committing expedition of both of our lives. So, again, hands up, but higher this time. Who's been to Central Africa? You will know then sometimes how difficult that travel can be. Yes, I'm getting some nods. So from military checkpoints to police bribes to broken down vehicles, it wasn't an easy start. We needed to get from Libreville, the capital, to a small town called Massima, and it took us a week. Here we are. This is the chief of Massima, very proud of his town. Now, if you ask anyone in Libreville and say, where's Massima? Or I'm going to Massima, you often get met with, where? What? Nobody even knows in Libreville about Massima. It's a small, tiny town that we'd found on the map as the potential last town with a village, with a road that we could get to. So when we arrived, we were met with a few confused faces. Now, I am often met with a lot of confused local faces when I arrive somewhere, but this one really was a brain scratcher for a lot of the locals, to a point where we spent about 3 days trying to convince the National Park Conservator that this was a really good idea. He couldn't understand why we were going, especially as a woman. What was I doing going there? With very quick glances to Dave to be like, what are you doing taking her? But little did they know I was the one leading the charge. So after convincing him, yes, we know what we're doing, we'll be fine, he made us sign a document which said, if we get in trouble, they're not coming to get us. And if we were unfortunate enough to not make it through the expedition at all, they wouldn't be to blame. And I signed it. It's not the first time I've signed these documents. And off we went. And I think it's fair to say, when your friends and family, when my mum says, oh, you're crazy doing this, that's one thing. When the local people question you, you do start to wonder. So we're getting into it. So this is very big faces of, that's me and Dave. That is the expedition team. So Dave is an expedition guide in himself. It's not like I just plucked somebody off the street. He brought with it skills. And we decided on this expedition, we were going to go lightweight. We needed to be small. I often say more people, more problems. And we didn't want to ask anyone to be put in a potentially precarious situations that we could find ourselves in. Now, we're not pro paddlers. I am not a professional whitewater paddler, certainly far from it. But what we have is lots of experience, and we knew that this expedition was more about endurance and mental strength than it was about skill. But let's be honest, it's naive to say 2 foreigners could go on an expedition alone. So here we are. This was a local team. I ended up forming, we never planned on it. So in the middle is Boras. Boras works with primatologists. He maps chimpanzee nests for researchers. He's also actually helped out on a few Steve Backshall shows. We didn't meet through that, but he's done some television. And I'd wanted Boras to work with me to transport some of my resupply kit, some spare food, some extra batteries, things like that, through the villages along the river. And I asked him to relay the kit with villagers as he goes. But he said, no, I am going to take on this task and I am going to recruit an entire team. And he recruited this wonderful, eclectic mix of people. Each one didn't know each other before. As we drove along to Massima, we had somebody else thrown in the back of the pickup, and this is what we ended up with. Now, here we go, the pack rafts again. This is everything we took. We head to the start point, and at this point, I will say we were already at the point of no return. The only way once we got on this river was downstream. There was no roads. It was so mountainous that helicopter rescue was not an option. So as soon as we put on that river and waved goodbye, that is it. Wait till we get out. Now that you ask how do we get out? We've got problems. It's all about self-rescue. And it's something we do a lot at work, but the idea was we get into trouble, we rescue ourselves. Now, you probably won't have seen it from Dave's picture. Dave isn't so small. Dave's about 6'2" and about 95 kilos. So if we get to a point beyond self-rescue where we can't walk out, I'm not going to be able to carry him. I mean, we tested it in Libreville and I couldn't get very far at all. So him injuring himself filled me with dread. But we had a lot of plans. Plan A, B, C, D, all the way through to Z. With Z being the one we really didn't want to do, which was going to be leave the injured party, navigate ourselves out of the jungle and get help. But that was going to require impeccable navigation skills, survival skills that we've never tested. So we really didn't want to have to get to that point. So after we waved goodbye to our team, we pushed off. Hopefully things aren't too pixelated. Some of these, let's see. We pushed off and we were truly alone. It was just us and the river, and that chaos of getting from Libreville left. And we waded actually through the beginning because the river was so shallow. It was the beginning of the river as close as we could get. We dragged our boats along, we paddled in the Peace, and we found our camp about 3 kilometres in. We found a little spot that was not too close to the edge of the river that we risked the crocodiles, but not too far that we got lost. And honestly, it was pure bliss. We drifted off to sleep and I wasn't worrying about the elephants or the crocodiles or the snakes. You could just find peace after a week of chaos. And so we began. So this is actually this is a screen grab from one of my GoPro shots. In the days that followed, we continued along the river through the thick jungle. What started as shallow meant that we could actually take our boats, and we came across, as you can see here, little natural dams, I like to call them. When you could get out, we could drag our boats over the top, or sometimes we had tree trunks that had fallen and we'd have to take the guess, can I fit through that pack raft size hole, or am I going to get pinned? And it was enjoyable. Yes, there was crocodiles we could worry about. Tried not to think about that too much, but we could get in and out of the river cooling off. But as we went down, the debris got bigger, it got more frequent, and the river got faster. And so as it went on, the river became more unrunnable. It got so much speed that even getting out, if you couldn't touch the ground, you'd be swept away. So without the strainers and without the natural dams, and a strainer, if you don't know what it is, think of a pasta colander, where the water goes through but the solid stuff doesn't, and where the solid stuff. So without them, we could have technically ran the rapids. They were runnable, but when you're facing things like this, or car-sized tree trunks, you're talking about 100% collision, pinning and potential drowning. And I would dare to say that even world-class paddlers at this point would have said, you know what, nah, I'm going to get out. So what do you do when that happens? You carry everything around, you portage it. Now, first couple of ones, maybe it's 100 metres, maybe it's a 200 metres, but they're painful in themselves because remember, I've said this is mountainous. We're not talking about nice flat areas where we can just wander along. No, everything has to be dragged up jungle, mud-clad mountains and brought round the other side. So it's very much about being on your hands and your knees, clinging to tree roots, dragging kit around. Oh, sorry. So at this point now, we're about 20 kilometres into the journey. We've surpassed our expectation of getting to Ngonde. We've messaged the team, we're not going to make it. You're going to have to wait for us, but just wait, we're on our way. We'd passed the point of no return, that was when we got on the river. We're now at a point where we call it the point of critical decision making. That's what we like to call it. And it was an area where we said, we know we're going into a deeper gorge. We know that we don't know what's ahead. Up until now, actually, apparently we thought we did know what we were going to run into, but we didn't. And we were making our way deeper into the gorge. Now, if we got to a point where we couldn't portage and we couldn't get over that fallen tree trunk or natural dam, we were trapped. Nobody was coming to get us, remember that. So continuing sort of felt impossible. But that decision was going to have to wait because it was getting to nightfall. And we decided we had to make camp. So around 4 o'clock every day, we'd make camp because it gets pretty dark in the jungle quick. Now we're in a gorge. We've got hammocks. All up the side of the gorge is sapling trees, and you don't want to be putting a hammock on a sapling tree. So our only option of camp that night was a rocky outcrop, probably around 2 metres above the water's edge. It sounds beautiful, actually. At the time we found it, maybe it was in our minds, wow, this is great, it'll be a scenic view of the river while we camp. But it wasn't. As our hammocks were slung, we settled into a loud clap of thunder. Now rain in a rainforest. That's normal, right? But of this magnitude, it was not what we wanted. Let's see if we can make this video work. Oh no, you've got no noise, but you can read it. At this point, you hear a big bang. So this is our camp, and this is what we could see as it was getting dark. Rain was smashing through the canopy, water was rising very quickly. And now it's not actually the water that's creeping up to our feet that I'm worried about. It's everything that I've just passed the last few days. That is every natural dam, every tree trunk that could potentially come rocketing down the valley towards us. Now, flash floods, they are nothing to be messed with, but we couldn't do a lot about it. There was very little we could do, actually. Oh, we're playing it again. Oh, apologies. Very little we could do about it. So we had to come up with a plan. We were suddenly two people who pride themselves in taking people to remote and risky environments, and we found ourselves in this position. And we questioned, have we taken too much risk to tell this story? Or was this wild unpredictably exactly what we needed? And so we sat there over the campfire as we sort of saw nightfall, and them little markers we were using to watch whether the river was rising or not had gone. And all we could do was listen. And we had a sort of, I guess we call it a sort of death-defying quiz with one another, working out, was this ridiculous? Question 1, would we hear a tree trunks and water rushing down this valley in this storm? And we answered, well, we think so, we hope so. Question 2, what were we going to do about it if we miraculously managed to hear this? And we said, well, okay, we'll answer. We're going to rush up these steep sides, grabbing onto trees, hoping that we didn't fall back into the water. That was our plan. And it seemed relatively sensible. Question 3. Okay, we've survived the flash flood. Are we going to be able to get out of here with no water? Well, not no water, God, plenty of water. No kit, no map, no shelter, and no communications. And the answer was probably not. And you think, well, what on earth are we going to do? We can't go into the forest at night. There's nowhere to put. We just have to manage it. And we looked at our kit and we found our throw lines that we use for water rescue. And we thought, well, we can use them. So Dave bravely scarpered up all of the kind of rock sides and tied off the 2 ropes, because we wanted one each because he didn't want to have to be chivalrous and say, you go first. And we tied knots on these ropes every half a metre. And we figured, well, if we hear it, we'll just run up and we'll grab them and we'll get to the top. But we still need our kit. So we then lugged all of our kit all the way up these ropes, 18 metres up, and tied them to a tree. We still had to sleep down by the water's edge because we did need sleep. It was also dangerous to be operating so tired. And we left everything up there. My actual issue was we took a tiny little hip flask of whiskey just in case we felt like we needed it at some point. And that felt like the night. So as we settled down in our hammocks, it's like, where's the whiskey? And we realised we'd left it up at the top. Now, we went to bed. We mimicked sleep, I think is the best way to say it. We turned off our head torches, we got in our hammocks, we said goodnight, but we didn't sleep. Thankfully, as you'll be happy to know, the sun came through the trees and we realised we'd made it through the night. But that wasn't problem over. We now had the problem of, are we going to continue still? What are we going? We've just seen what's happened here, and we had to make a decision. So this is an image that was taken that morning, and I put up the drone that I had, and I'm a terrible drone pilot, I will say that, but it was enough just to work out what was going on around, because I was hoping maybe there was a confluence, maybe there was something. There wasn't. But I will say that with all of this, we took it upon ourselves to think, what is the risk here and what is the reward? And it's something I weigh up a lot in my job. Is making this film worth the risk? And it's a lot harder when you don't have a broadcaster, when you don't have somebody who's relying on you, to actually feel that you can make the right decision for yourselves. And we did make a decision we'd hoped not to have to make. And we were going to leave the river and continue on foot. And as we made that decision, I thought back to that anthropologist data that I had from 15 years ago. And we looked at them extensive maps and I thought, oh, it's 5 kilometres away from where we are right now. Maybe the path is still there. Maybe this is our only hope. We're going to go to that path. And as we zoomed into the satellite imagery, we saw a small patch of land. Maybe there's people. People mean safety, we hoped. So we made the decision and off we went. Now, remember all them bags that I said we were carrying that were in the boat? Once you deflate that pack raft, they're pretty damn big. And so when we were trying to work out how long it was going to take us, that 5 kilometres, and anyone who runs 5 kilometres, the speedy few might do it in 25 minutes, we worked out 3 days is what it was going to take us. And that was going forward only. Relaying kit, so taking one lot of bags, putting it down, going back, getting the next lot of bags, that was going to be 9 days. We did not have the food or the physical energy to do that. So something was going to have to give. And sadly, that something was our entire river kit. So our pack rafts, our PFDs, our helmet. Because at this point, we probably weren't going to need it. It felt like the river expedition was an absolute fail. And my heart sunk because I just bought it. But I took this picture thinking maybe I could use it as a way to identify it if somebody went back to get it. But really, I knew there was very little chance we could get it back. And we sent a message to the support team, to Boras, the guy you saw from. I said, you know what, Boras? It's not happening. This river is not passable. It is over. Come to these coordinates, leave Ngonde, bring us some food, and we'll then walk to Ngonde together. Now, we were carrying big bags. We had I had around 30 to 35 kilos. Dave was carrying closer to 45 because we had to carry everything that we needed, and that's water. We were on the mountain tops. We had no rivers, no streams. We could only carry what we could carry, and every night we'd have to hope for rain. And now we've both spent time in equatorial forests before, and it felt like knowing the risks of the jungle felt safer than not knowing the risks of the river. But when we weren't dealing with worrying about forest elephants and deadly snakes or tripping down the slopes that we were trying to avoid, we were worried about lack of water. 10 litres, imagine. I think that's one. We had 10 of them to last 2 of us 3 days. So you can imagine when it rained, everyone was taps up, getting everything we could, catching what rain we could. We'd take it in turns. Here's a couple of the images. We'd take it in turns to cut a machete path. Now, every step almost you're swinging, you're cutting, because people aren't here. And as it's hills, you're getting more light onto the forest. So you're getting lots more of that nasty shrubbery type thing rather than the big trees. So I decided to hone a skill I had learnt from living with the Benjelly for 2 months. Now, I spent most time with the women. They don't want, unlike the men who are the hunters and they want to keep away from they want to be quiet to the wildlife, women want to scare it away and they sing. So I decided to think back to my repertoire and sing 80s power ballads, Disney soundtracks and hits from the musical. And it felt like it kept everyone happy. I'm not sure if for Dave it was just motivation just to get out the jungle so I would stop. And it was the 3rd day when I was singing my usual ABBA soundtrack that I found, have I got it here with me? I don't have it. I'll show you later if anyone wants to see it. I found a singular bullet casing from a gun. And I was so excited. And it wasn't because it was a bullet casing, but it's because what it signified, and that was people. We carried on. I actually clung to it. I've still got it now. I hold on to it, that bullet casing. And we came across this, a biscuit packet on a stick. And we realised, hang on a minute, this is not accident. This is on purpose. And it was what seemed like a crossroads. And suddenly we think, well, there must be people near here. We must be people near here. What do we follow the paths? They're going in the other direction of where we're going, or do we go our way? And we did choose our way retrospectively. We argued about that a lot as we walked. But we continued on foot. And it took everything in my power not to take the biscuit packet, because I saw it as littering. Oh, God, no, you pick it up if you're on the street here. But I had to think, it's an innovative way to signpost where you were going. And so as we went off, we had a sat phone message from Secret Compass, if anyone knows them. They manage safety for productions. And they kindly said to me, we'll keep an eye on you. So I gave them my GPS map and Boras's GPS map. And they'd heard that we'd changed our plans and they had a little look and they thought, out of curiosity, where are they going? And we had this message, we have a problem. No, I've got a problem. What problem have you got? He said, your team, they're not on the way to you. They've walked 2 days, yes, but 2 days in the wrong direction. Oh, and they've got your food. So now, not only are we trying to get to that little village that we thought might exist, we're going to have to get even further. So I said, tell them, come back to Ngonde. And it turned out Boras's English was not as good as it was, and his GPS skills weren't as good as I'd been told. So in French, we said, come to Ngonde, just meet us in Ngonde. So here we are. As we were walking through, it wasn't my warblings of Mamma Mia that Dave had to listen to, but we heard singing. And next thing we know, we appeared in front of these ladies. And I'll be honest, I've just been trekking through the jungle for a long time. I've not seen anyone since Massima. I'm probably looking pretty bad. And these 2 white folk are just appearing from the jungle. And I was kind of expecting a little bit more of a shock. But we got a little nod of the head as if it was normal. And I think they were just confused. And we tried our best French. I tried to introduce myself. No one in the village spoke French, which is absolutely fair enough, probably because my French is terrible. Maybe they did. But we found one man and he said, I'll help find some people for you. We'll take 2 guys, they'll split the weight of your bags and we'll take you to Ngonde. and it felt so close, and it just felt so safe to be with people. And suddenly that weight of the jungle had lifted, and we were fastly marched through plantations, through paths, and we were following these tracks that my anthropologist had given us, and it was a shock. And we arrived at what we were told was our destination, but it wasn't Ngondé. Again, in my best French, we had we want to go to Ngondé, please, that's our plan. And we were told, no. Why? No, it doesn't exist. And I said, what? And they said, it's abandoned. It hasn't existed for 2 years. Nobody knows that. Even the conservator didn't know that. Apparently they had elephant issues. Didn't all quite add up. Now my main question was, where is Boras? He's meant to be here with my food. So that night we set up camp. As you can see, here we are setting up a tent, and the whole village came out just to look at what was going on. Children cried because they weren't used to seeing foreigners, because the only people who'd seen foreigners had been the men who had left to maybe find jobs. The next morning, thankfully, Boras arrived. You can see him there, sat next to Dave. And we came up with a plan. But what do? The river had failed. We had no expedition. We had no kit. The village no longer existed. It was an absolute failure on a phenomenal scale that I hadn't had before on an expedition. When I make TV shows, I have to have a guarantee of a certain level of guarantee, I guess. So I have to know that the expedition is possible. And we broke it down. Okay, what we're going to do, here we go. We're going to send a mini expedition to find kits. This is Dave trying to draw a little map of where we left the bags. If we can get the kit back, maybe we can carry the expedition. And I will tell you, my heart sunk when he came back that very night. That trip had taken me 3 days. He did it in 1. The story. I'd gone there to try and find out what was happening in that part of the world, and the village I wanted to go to didn't exist. So what was I going to do? Luckily, the wonderful people of Mutumbi, the new village, sat and talked to me. I heard the stories that we read about there, the human-wildlife conflict of elephants invading crops. I heard youth wanting to leave the city. I heard the battle that it was to remain living in the jungle. And thankfully, actually, they felt very protected from deforestation because they're so inaccessible. So I didn't feel like I was getting a story that was different. And then I heard some loud bangs. And I said to the chief, what's going on? And next thing, he's taken me to go see this. And the whole village, all of the youth were panning for gold. I've not seen this on a small scale like this with just the local kids. It wasn't artisanal, it wasn't big groups of people, it was just the young kids panning for gold. Now, I hadn't realised it was such a big thing. Before I went into Gabon, just after the military coup that happened in October, before that, outsiders were coming in to take gold, but the military control said, no, we have no outsiders exporting gold. So it left it open for small-scale mining. And they were doing it, I will say, in a very environmentally friendly way. But it was a big earner for the youth who wanted to buy goods. And there was this void between jungle life and city life now merging. But the question was, is this out of choice or is it out of necessity? So with our kit in our hands, the trip necessarily wasn't over, but we had to make some big decisions. We'd had a bad experience on the river. We knew it was going to get faster, bigger and more unpredictable. And we knew our support team were not necessarily going to come and help us. We were back to plan Z, which we really didn't want to. And we thought about it and we weighed it up. What is our objective of this expedition? And the river was not the objective. It was to live jungle life and meet people. So we recruited some new members of our team, this is Junior, and said, we're going to continue on foot. We're going to turn this river expedition into a 100-kilometre jungle trek in river shoes. So we recruited Junior and another to help carry the pack rafts because we weren't just in case we needed them again. And off we went. Now Junior, as you can probably see, is a kid. He is not over 16 and I did not want to take him. Because we all think, well, no, he's a child, you can't ask him to come. I'm not responsible for him, I'm not his mother. And it felt crazy as I was giving my reasons to his mum why I couldn't take him, because he knows more about the jungle than any single one in our group. So with Valentine, one of the older members of my team, promising to take guardianship of Junior, off we went, because he was, to be fair, the only one who would come. Everyone wanted to stay and pan gold. It was far more profitable. Off we went to Ngonde, and as you can probably see from the picture on the right, it was certainly abandoned. What it did turn out, though, was Junior was from Ngonde, and he explained that it wasn't elephants that shut down this 100-year-old village. It was gold. So the youth needed to earn money. And this is crazy for a community that were hunter-gatherers who were never economically driven by currency. So I said, why? Why is this Junior? And bear in mind, he is 16, he can only speculate. We talked about whether he thinks maybe, well, actually that hunter-gatherer lifestyle, it's not that they don't want to do it, it's that they can't. So the new conservation laws that have been passed means that their way of life is becoming illegal. So we're starting to look at fortress conservation, so that's sort of human-free conservation where we say, no, you can't hunt. No, you can't live the way you used to. So the only option at this point is to come to the town. When you look at Junior and you look at the guys that I was with, you know they're not exploiting the land like the rest of us do. They were guardians of it. Now the jungle walk gave me time to talk. And I will say they didn't like the ABBA, but they did enjoy a good Girl Guide chant, I will say that. But we talked a lot about what the future held for them and why were they there? When everyone was staying back and panning gold, when you can make more money, why were they with me? And they said they want to work in conservation, but not the fortress conservation that Gabon knows, but in the human-led conservation. They wanted to protect their way of life and they wanted to protect the jungle that was their home. Now, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of exactly what happened on this jungle trek. You can ask me afterwards, but we spent the time not surviving like Dave and I were just doing. We were living it. We were fishing with them. We were seeing elephants. We were being attacked by wasps. We were finding leopard prints. We saw the life of the jungle. And at one point, it felt like going on this trek was the failure of the trip. But actually, it was everything we needed. So I look around at this team, my little team of ragtag, of random people who didn't know each other before. We got to Fugamu, which was the last town out of the jungle. Junior got his papers because one of the big things that is the problem for anyone in these villages, they don't have papers, and you cannot travel around Gabon if you do not have your paper. So even if you want to go get work, you necessarily can't. So Junior got his papers from the National Park Conservator, who was quite shocked that we were still alive, to be honest, I think. Everybody in that team was praised for their heroic feat. We hadn't paddled the river. That would have been a world first, but it wasn't what motivated us. What we had done was crossed the entire region on foot. And for me, I'd got to understand the jungle. What the future holds for each of them, I don't know. They all want to work in conservation and they all want to make the jungle a place that they can live. But I think it's fair to say that in a world where we're disconnected from the wild, Gabon has a place where nature still reigns, humans are resilient, and if we can start looking at expeditions not just as adventures, but as tools to learn tools to learn about the world. And there you go. So I believe there was a Q&A. If anyone has any questions, I'm aware there's probably lots of different things we haven't talked about. And this is being made into a film, which will hopefully be soon. I'm making lots and lots of different films at the moment for broadcasters, but this is definitely at the forefront and is going to be done soon. But if anyone has any questions, you're more welcome to ask. Hi.
So you hadn't planned to recruit your team. How did you sort of reward them with, because they were embarking on a dangerous trip and they're trying to also survive.
Yeah.
So how did you reward them?
Yeah, it's employment. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily, oh, we give people money and they do what we want, but it's I'm here, I'm doing this trip. Do you want to be part of it? There will be money for it, but really for us, particularly with this team, there's also got to be the drive to want to do it. They could have stayed and panned for gold, but they wanted to get something from it as well. So I think I've never asked anyone to do anything for free, definitely not. But one of the biggest drivers for all of them was that they got to meet the conservator at the end as well. So, yeah.
So you had a contingency, which is an interesting factor, because obviously budgets are tight when you're planning expeditions. So building in a contingency is key.
Yes. Oh, it totally is. I mean, having money just to be able to help pay for the two men who helped us get to Ngonde. I always carry $100 can get you very far. Yeah. Yeah.
But you said you were buying things from the town before you left as gifts.
Yes.
Invisible villages that happen. But what kind of gifts are the things you thought they'd like? And
Yeah, do you know, it's very difficult to know, isn't it? It is very difficult to know, and you don't want to assume. So I worked with the anthropologist, but also a few people on the ground who'd heard about the village and knew about the village. So we took useful items like knives, razor blades, which sounds dodgy, but they do use them a lot, and materials, because that is a gift of sort of not just necessity. There's a lot of the beautiful fabrics that you would have seen are a real gift in the culture that we were in. Oh, here we are.
What an adventure you had. I think all praise to the two of you for succeeding
Thank you.
in a different way. Some of your photographs seem to be from the sky.
Yes.
How did you take
Drone.
those?
I took a drone. Yes, no, we didn't have helicopters. A drone.
You used the drone to sort of show you the way ahead as well.
We tried. We really tried. The problem is with the forest overgrowth, as you can imagine, we would just go up and it was green. And actually then we had humidity issues of fogging. And so it wasn't a useful tool, but sometimes it was good enough to know there's no path there, we can't see it.
Really small.
Tiny little, yeah, about that big, yeah.
Firstly, thank you. That was fascinating. If I remember correctly, there was a coup.
Yes. Yep.
What was your experience of that situation? Or did you steer well clear of it? Was there much sort of visible evidence of that when you arrived?
Yeah, do you know, I was meant to go out, as I think Hen and Nikki will know, I was meant to go out just as the coup happened. I think it happened within a week before I flew, and I did decide not to go because I don't want to add myself into that situation because it's unfair on getting in there and needing help. Monitoring it with the contacts that I already had, I knew that actually it wasn't what we were necessarily seeing in the press from the UK. And actually there's a lot of very happy people, a lot of people were very grateful for what was happening. And actually flying out there, if I'm honest, you didn't notice the difference. It was, if anything, people were just more welcoming. When I did get to Massima, there was a little confusion about why I was there. People did think I was looking for gold, and I was being told, you're not allowed to look for gold, you're a foreigner. But other than that, no, everyone seemed relatively pleased about the coup, if you can be.
What's the situation now? Is it junta or has there been an election?
Do you know what? I'm not sure if there's an election yet. I think it was planned for later this year, or maybe next year. Don't quote me on that.
Sorry, one other question. Do you know if with new leadership since the coup, there might be a different approach to fortress conservation?
I don't know if the leadership will change that. I don't know enough, if I'm honest. I'm not going to try and speak to something I don't know. But what I do know is there's incredible organisations that are now popping up, that are NGOs that are trying to encourage the national parks to be forward thinking with their sort of human-led conservation.
We've all seen problems with illegal gold mining in places like Brazil or whatever. Is there a risk that will just follow on in places like that get on?
I mean, I would hate to sort of again speak to that without knowing. It's not a particular strength of mine understanding the politics around gold mining, or especially what's happening right now in Gabon. There is going to be a risk, and that is certainly what you saw. So one of our guys, Valentine, actually, he's a middleman for buying small-scale gold. And I think, look, The military, as last I heard, was crunching down on it, but illegal is hard to stop, I think.
How does, so 2 questions.
Yep.
How does the process of storyboarding work, particularly when you're on the hoof and you know your original plan has fallen through? Do you kind of very consciously plan out various interviews that you're going to do and shoot accordingly? Or is that something you maybe do retrospectively, just sifting through footage that you have? So that's question 1.
Yep.
I'll ask you to ask first.
Okay. There was no storyboarding in that. If I'm making a normal film, yeah, we'll have a plan, we'll have a narrative. If something changes, we might sit down and go, okay, how are we going to tell this story now? Who are the key players? Who do we need to interview? That wasn't this. That was very much a point of, let's just survive. Let's get out of here and then we'll figure it out. And it was only at that moment that we joined Junior and the guys in the jungle could we because at this point we're not even halfway through the trip. And I can think, well, it'll be fine. We'll make the film next half. It'll be fine. And it's only retrospectively that you realise that in this occasion. But no, normally I would be always thinking.
Okay, interesting. And then, second question was about language. What language did Junior and the other guys?
Oh, many different languages. Fang's quite... yes, well, that was Boras. So Boris doesn't speak as many languages, you'd hope. Junior spoke a little bit of French. So we would often work with Boras or Boras through Dembu or one of the other local guys, and it'd be often kind of quite a multilingual conversation.
Okay, interesting.
Okay.
I have a question. The river that you were guiding,
Yeah.
is that at any point run alongside the Trans-Gabonese Railway?
No, I know which river you mean though. This one goes straight through the national parks. It'll join the. I'm going to have to look at a map, but it is a confluence of that river. Yeah.
I only ask a question because in 1977, I worked for Citibank and we financed a number of projects in Gabon,
Oh, amazing.
part of the Trans-Gabonese,
Yeah.
manganese mines, etc. And at one point, we flew out to the railhead because building the rail in the jungle, and we landed in the middle of a French Legion encampment,
Oh, right. Okay.
French Foreign Legion encampment,
Yeah.
and they were there at the railhead in this tiny little village, and they were there in case President Bongo, it's a French guy, I can't remember exactly what it was, s'il y a des soucis, he's got problems. We're there. But they were there, I mean, they literally landed by helicopter,
Wow.
dug out, sort of pushed the people back into the jungle.
Wow. No. Oh, interesting. Yeah, I'll have to remember that river that you're talking about. But yeah, it was a confluence of.
There we go. You said obviously a lot of it's to do with mental fortitude as much as skill, which makes sense. So what I'm interested to know is how do you manage obviously there must be friction at times, right? When someone wants to go one way, you want to go the other. How do you navigate that as the two of you, like when there literally is, only the two of you and no one else?
It's hard. There's definitely heated discussions. Look, you just have to look at facts. And I think that's sort of what made someone like Dave a really interesting person to bring. We have to put aside our personal agendas of wanting to paddle that river or wanting to achieve something for me. It's like, what is the goal of the expedition? Why are we here? And yeah, sometimes you put up and go, fine, we'll go that way. And then after hacking through an old plantation and getting stuck and taking hours to walk 100 metres, you'll have a little argument and then you'll go the other way. But no, it's often getting to the facts, working out what's the best route. Yeah.
Did you encounter any wild animals?
Well, when it was just Dave and I, not because of my singing, no. But, or the least that I saw. Actually, what was really interesting that I didn't mention was that specific part of the jungle hasn't got a lot of information in terms of, from Westerners, of reptiles and various different animals. So we actually spoke to some researchers prior to going. We gathered lots of information, so crocodiles, certain types of snakes, certain frogs, and offered imagery and GPS coordinates, and we've now been published as part of their paper. Big animals, we were aware of elephants. Especially when we were with the support team, they were, oh, elephants, right, move. But you don't always see them. But we had lots of leopard footprints and things like that around, yeah.
I just wondered if you've got any more plans for new expeditions, and also I wondered about what was it like coming back. Do you go back to your normal life without Dave, and do you have more plans to sort of do more expeditions with Dave or with other people?
Yeah, so at the moment I have a lot of television projects that I'm working on. So I'm actually making a big climate change documentary for the BBC Natural History Unit. So that sort of keeps me busy. I've got a couple of projects I'm trying to get up and running, which is actually going back to some of these communities that I work with and empowering them to tell their stories rather than it just being us going in and telling their stories. But coming home, yeah, I call it home shock. And I'm sure a few people can understand what that means. You come back and you're on the tube going through London and somebody's bickering about somebody not giving them their personal space, and you just think, you don't know what is going on in this world. So yeah, I call it home shock, and I experience it more than culture shock these days.
Have you done any river-based expeditions before? And with the benefit now, the knowledge you got from this, would you do one in the future?
I have done river expeditions before. I did one with Steve Backshall in Expedition Series 2. We were in Gabon, and actually I had an incident on that river. If anyone's seen that series and seen that episode, you'll see that Steve had a bit of trouble. But actually what you don't see on camera is I got stuck in a stopper. So if anyone doesn't know what a stopper is, it's like, there's a few people who do. It's like, imagine a whirlpool, but that way. And I got stuck in it, and generally it is as it says, you don't get out of it. And I was actually smashed around quite a lot, constantly taking breath, thinking my mother's going to kill me, I'm going to die on this expedition. And I got out, but it traumatised me. And I spent the next few years trying to go to whitewater centres. And I'll be honest, I'm still not over it, but I still went and did that. And I think that's sort of the key is, as soon as I say I'm never doing that again, then that's it for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And the second part, you do?
Would I do it again? I will always, yeah. I'll always go back to Gabon, and I'll always do a river trip or any expedition. I think you've just got to arm yourself with the knowledge and know where your tolerance sits. Have an understanding of your mindset, your skill, what you're about to undertake, and have the conviction that you know when you say enough's enough. And we did that then.
And with the knowledge you got, could you do that river?
No.
Now, you think it's
You could attempt to portage a lot of it. You would need to go with a lot more food. I think I would. Look, I don't know what was downstream of where we were. I think if you wanted to spend the trip not on a river expedition but hacking through deadwood, that would probably what it would be, I think. Yeah. Hi Neville.
Hi.
Can I just say thank you, Neville funded this through the award.
Proud of this amazing trip, and for me to play a tiny part in it, I'm very, very pleased to have been.
Thank you for your support.
Contributed in some very small way.
In a massive way.
I'm curious about that biscuit box, really.
Yeah.
What the biscuit box there, and what would happen if you'd gone that way? Or whatever.
Who knows what had gone? We might have been there in a day. I don't know.
Sarah left it for you as a clue.
They hadn't left it for us, certainly not. It was hunting trails. So when Dave was able to do his mini expedition back to get our bags, they were effectively fell running through them trails. So we just didn't know. But if we'd followed it, we could have equally gone a completely different direction. But yeah, it showed that with that bullet casing as well, it was an active hunting area. But who knows if we'd followed it.
Oh, yeah. Very inspiring.
You've got to make a decision, haven't you? Yeah.
About food and water.
Yeah.
Did you obtain that from the jungle at all?
Not food. I didn't fancy hunting. It's not a skill I possess. We took fishing lines actually with the thought that we could try to fish if needed, but we made our own little ration packs up, so high calorie dehydrated food, lots of energy bars. We were definitely on a calorie deficit. It got to a point during the trip where we realised that we were eating the same amount, but Dave required more. So I gave him some of my food, so we were on an equal deficit because he was just wasting away. But water, we carried gravity filters. So we just took water straight from the river and filtered it.
And were those vines to get water?
There weren't, but we didn't need them. Apart from obviously we could have done with them on the tops of the hills, but luckily it rained every night.
Could you tell me the name of the national park?
Yeah, Waka National Park. WAKA, yeah.
Which direction is it from Neville?
You're going kind of southeast.
Right.
Yeah, you'll see there's a Mounted Bungee is, I think, in there. It's quite a known mountain point. Yeah. Right. I think that's it.
Well, what can we say? A long way to go for a packet of custard cream.
No.
Thank you very much, Becky. Really fantastic.
Thank
you. Give us something to think about when we're on the tube. Don't you think? Thank you again. And for our next Explorer meeting, it's going to be on April the 29th with Tom Allen, who will talk about the Trans-Caucasian Trail, which leaves me flabbergasted. Ed knows all about that, right?
Well, I'm going to find out.
Oh, you're going to find out. So, tickets always available on Eventbrite. So we look forward to welcoming you then. But thank you again for coming.
Yeah,
really.
Thank you.
Thank you.